Good evening, everybody. My name is Goose, and today I'm going to share with you my review of HIVESWAP, released on Steam on September 14th, 2017. Now, HIVESWAP is a significant game because it's the first game released by What Pumpkin Studios, which were kind of a ragtag team of developers put together to create this Kickstarter game that was first funded in 2012 with over $2 million, which is pretty significant for as far as a Kickstarter game goes. I think it was the record for Kickstarter games at its time. Obviously, that record has since then been broken, but it's a pretty significant number, and it took 5 years to make. And today we've got HIVESWAP Act 1, which is essentially the first episode in what we can expect to be a few more episodes of this installment of the HIVESWAP story. Before I get into this review, I'm going to just make a few things really clear. First off, I'm definitely not the most experienced with the point-and-click genre. My last serious point-and-click game was Disney's Mickey Mouse and the Magical Mirror for the Nintendo GameCube. So my experience in the genre is relatively limited, and I hope you will understand as we go forward with this review. Also, I want to make it clear that I am definitely a Homestuck fan. I'm very passionate about the comic. I've read the whole thing. I've kind of been a part of an unofficial part of its scene maybe since 2012, 2013-ish. So I'm definitely really passionate, and that's going to probably influence my opinion. Just wanted to put that up front before we get into the formal review of HIVESWAP. So I'm going to start with the gameplay of HIVESWAP. HIVESWAP has got some basic point-and-click gameplay with some intermingled, interactive games that kind of filter into the puzzles. At one point, you're playing a kind of version of, oh my goodness, that Atari game. I think it's called Caterpillar, where you're playing as that worm thing, and you got to eat all the things, and your worm gets bigger, and you kind of move in a very basic left, right, up, down, and you cannot touch your tail or the edge of the screen or you die. That's just kind of one of the examples of kind of a little mini game that you play within the point and click style. But other than that, you're doing your normal point and click fare. So you're picking up items, you're exploring the world, reading flavor text, seeing what works with what, solving some kind of minor puzzles along the way. One of the interesting things about HIVESWAP is it kind of integrates a little mini battle style into that point and click gameplay. So you eventually get encounters with enemies where the tension is increased. You feel like you have to move faster. You really don't, though. It's very turn-based. But, you kind of, instead of fighting enemies, you kind of solve puzzles around them. But it changes the interface, and it changes the music, and it feels kind of nice. It feels like a little RPG battle. I definitely wish that there was an actual RPG battle within HIVESWAP. It would kind of add to, another element to what is a pretty expectable and I would say almost stale slab of gameplay, which is kind of unfortunate. The nice thing about HIVESWAP, though, is it does have a kind of unique, wacky world that kind of stands out. It gives it a little character. There's a kind of very deliberate 90s, 80s aesthetic going on with the characters, with their interests, and it's just kind of built into the time period. The character you play as, Joey, has a Super Nintendo that she's particularly fond with. So overall, I would say the gameplay is solid. It holds up. It's impressive for a studio that basically came out of nowhere, but I wouldn't say it's anything to write home about. And I think that people who are not fans of point and click, or just looking for a lot of polish, are not going to find what they're looking for. And speaking of polish, I'm just going to go ahead and briefly mention that HIVESWAP on PC does not have a lot of configuration options. Basically, all you have is resolution, windowed mode, and VSync, which is really unfortunate. And it's definitely unacceptable in 2017. So definitely want to put that out there. Also, I ran this game on my toaster box, a HP Pavilion G6, which specs you can look up because I am not going to bother doing that myself. But I'll just go ahead and let you know that my graphics card is old and terrible. An issue I've noticed people complaining about in the Steam comments is, them not being able to view cutscenes, and I think that's probably a hardware issue, but it definitely occurred for me. So I probably missed out on most of the cutscenes in the game just because my game would kind of soft crash on me. The frame rate of the cutscene would go really low, and then I would not see anything on my screen until I would be able to control my character again, which was very unfortunate. But I kind of chalked that up to a hardware issue more than anything else. Before we get to the story, I'm just going to briefly mention that I also really enjoyed the music for this game. The soundtrack is nice. It's your normal MS Paint Adventures fare of, wacky tunes with some kind of pixely aesthetic mixed in, which I just find myself really enjoying. Some of the tracks were a little short. I found myself stuck on a few puzzles, and so when I was stuck in those puzzles, I found myself listening to the same kind of minute or so loop over and over again, which was kind of unfortunate. Soured me on a few of the tracks, but I would still say that I really enjoyed the music overall from What Pumpkin's HIVESWAP Act 1. And I think the most significant thing to talk about with this game, as probably with hopefully most point-and-click games have, is a solid story. So does HIVESWAP Act 1 have a solid story? Does it lay the groundwork for some interesting acts to follow? Personally, I think it's kind of haphazard, the implementation of this story. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to be able to flesh this out into maybe 3 significant acts when this one only lasted me 3 hours. And I found myself not really kind of having enough happen in the story or having it be too contrived to feel like a lot of significant events happened, at least to the characters and the world around them within the story. I felt like everything that kind of happened was kind of me being pushed along to make sure that this game fulfills this premise, and that is a human trading places with a being, I guess, from a different universe. This human swaps places with a troll from a different universe, which is an alien race. And that's kind of the whole premise here. However, everything kind of feels like I'm kind of being pushed towards it. I wouldn't say it's that significant, but it definitely, some of the things feel a little bit contrived. What I do definitely want to mention, though, because I'm definitely sound like I'm being hard on the game, was that the characters are living and breathing. They're very real. I first did not see myself relating to Joey that much at the beginning. I didn't find her having that much depth or a lot of intrigue. But by the end of the 3 hours, she was fantastic. I really enjoyed her character, and I felt like it was very three-dimensional. She, made some decisions that I did not expect her to make. She acted rashly and she acted calculatedly. It was just really cool to see a character that was developed in such a short period of time really kind of interacting in this world and making some very interesting decisions. The supporting cast is also pretty solid. I found myself by the end of the story of this 3-hour first act, feeling good. There was a moment at the end that really kind of touched me, and it made me feel good. I got some good feelings from it. I think HIVESWAP definitely has some potential as far as the story goes. Gameplay-wise, there's definitely room for improvement as What Pumpkin moves on to their further installments. This game took me 3 hours to finish for $8. That's all right. There's worse value propositions out there. But I definitely think, especially as a Homestuck fan, there was a lot there for me to enjoy. Value-wise, maybe, from people coming from outside of, understanding the Homestuck webcomic, they might find a little less for themselves to enjoy. But overall, HIVESWAP is pretty solid, and it's not a train wreck. That's the one thing that I'm really happy about, is that What Pumpkin, a studio that was basically put together overnight, was able to... I would say, overnight, there's a lot of controversy surrounding this Kickstarter, and I'm not going to cover it in this video just because it's so intricate and irresolute. There's not a lot of clear indications of what's going on here. But I would say that this is a pretty significant achievement for What Pumpkin, even if it did take them 5 years. They have something to show for it, for their backers, and it's not terrible, it's an accomplishment in and of itself. Does what HIVESWAP Act 1 hold up as its standalone game, apart from, the Homestuck fandom, the Homestuck webcomic? That's a hard question for me. I would say that it's a solid enough game, and if you're kind of interested in the 80s aesthetic, if you've, watched it recently, or, you enjoy Stranger Things, you might get something out of this game. If you are very nostalgic for classic gaming, you might see something you like. But is it for you? I think that, you owe it to yourself to check out some more coverage of this game before making that decision, because I wouldn't give you a definite yes, honestly. For Homestuck fans, for people who are fans of MS Paint Adventures, Andrew Hussey's work, I would say this game is a definite buy. For $8, you get a lot of interesting plot elements, and I think that it's for that specific demographic, it's definitely a replayable game. There's a lot there, and What Pumpkin definitely hasn't soiled the name of Homestuck, and I think they have some potential as a development studio. This game's a little bit rough, but it's got a lot. It's going places. You're going places, kid. So that's all I got to say on HIVESWAP Act 1. Leave a like if you thought my opinions were interesting, or if you disagreed, that's fine. Drop a comment, and if you have some differing views on what you thought about this game. It's always good to have a discussion. Thanks for tuning in to my review of HIVESWAP Act 1, and I hope you have a good night. Thank you.